Hello and welcome to episode 3 of In Isolation. We are still stuck inside, but thankfully that means the climbers are as well, so we can get hold of them. And we got Adam Ondra. Nothing else to say. Roll the tape, Mr. Video Man. Adam, welcome along. Thank you for joining us. How is isolation?
Well, things in Czech Republic are a little bit less serious. Like, we still have a lockdown. But I'm very lucky to have a pretty decent gym right at home. So I've been training quite high quality, I would say, in the last few weeks.
Who are you isolated with? Are you just on your own?
So I'm isolated with my girlfriend, Eva. So it's been a pretty amazing time, actually.
How strict is it in Czech? Can you leave the house? Can you go for walks?
For the last few weeks, you could leave the house for a walk. Theoretically, you shouldn't drive and go rock climbing. Some people did, for sure. Right now, the rock climbing should be okay. Some of the shops reopened and seems like the life is starting again. But hard to say if it's maybe too early and we might not pay the price.
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot of questions for you today. I'm sure you've watched both episodes of the show so far.
The second, I haven't had the time to finish it.
Wrong answer.
Really? Yeah, no, he's in isolation. He hasn't got time. Come on. But we want to talk about all things competition today. So I guess we start at the beginning. What drew you to competing back in the day?
I think at the very beginning, competition actually drew me into climb more seriously. When I was 6 years old, I was hanging out with my parents at the crag. I can't really tell I was obsessed. I just did it because everybody around me did it. But then when I was climbing a little bit in the gym, there were some other friends who told me why doesn't Adam go to the competitions, youth competitions? And I was like, yeah, I want to try. My parents were maybe less excited, but nevertheless, we went and I took the third place and I got a metal cup. And that really motivated me because I wanted to get more cups and ideally with the number 1 on it. So I think the very first motivation that I should take climbing more seriously was actually I wanted to get more cups. And that got me into competitions.
Did you ever feel the pressure coming from rock climbing and doing so well at such a young age? Did you ever feel pressure as soon as you went into competitions to win? Was there lots of people, there's Adam, and kind of expecting big things?
I think the most pressure I felt was when I entered the European Youth Cups and Youth World Championships when I was 14. Because until then, on the Czech competitions, I knew almost nothing can happen, that I will just end up winning. On the youth competitions, on the European or world level, it was kind of expected as well, but at the same time, I knew I had to kind of climb relatively well, and that was the most stressful. Paradoxically, it was so much easier when I entered the World Cup scene, because there I felt for sure, maybe my rock climbing achievement speaks for some kind of chances, but I felt especially the very first competitions, no pressure. I just give it a try and I arrived for the first World Championships and just climb without that pressure at all. And on the top of that, it was really stressful because for everybody else, it's one competition every 2 years. For me, it was the first one, okay, let's give it a try.
Yeah, I remember your first European Youth Cups and I remember how much expectation there was on you because you were already a wonder kid from what you were doing outside on rock. And you already had climbers like David Lama, Jakob Schubert, Martin Stranik, Sachi Amma. They were the people that you probably looked up to as a youth climber. But who do you remember competing against in your age group? There were some quite strong guys, I think.
Yeah. So Jan Hoyer, Max Rudiger, Stefan Zolfi, I think these 3, they were really strong from the very beginning. And actually on my very first Youth Cup, it was in Imst. I was climbing in the finals, and at like the 5th vault, I thought like, maybe I could make a split and make a no-hand rest. So I made a split, I made a no-hand rest, I wanted to continue, and then the belayer didn't want to give me a slack. And I was actually using a part of the wall which was behind black tape. But I just didn't get it until I was lowered back to the ground, and the referee told me like, ooh, you were behind the black tape. So I was 10 on that comp.
But then you won the rest
that
of the
increased
season.
the pressure. That increased pressure for the next comp as well.
It's just thinking back to when you started. Actually, did you train for competitions when you started? Were you specifically training like you do if you had a big comp in mind, or were you just raw talent?
Like until the first World Cups, I wouldn't train for competitions. I would be just climbing all the time. But you know, the weekend before competition, for sure, I would spend outdoors. It wasn't like, no, I have to stay in the gym. So I would be like used to climbing on plastic. Like, no way. At the same time, I was confident enough that I don't need it to win the competition.
Pretty amazing. I mean, it works for Kruder. He climbs outside all the time.
At the moment, I can't really do it anymore. Huh?
Yeah.
Like, I need to adapt myself. It might work for Yedne, actually, because like he's so good in like coordination stuff, and like when he climbs outside, he works on a lot of his weaknesses. So it is actually pretty good physically for him to go outdoors before going to the competition.
You mentioned your parents weren't that keen for you to get involved in competitions straight away, but did you always feel like you had a healthy attitude towards competing? Like, did you get advice from, say, Martin Stranick or other coaches or your parents just as to how to approach competitions with a really healthy mind? Because in some scenarios, competition in sport in general can feel a little bit unhealthy because it could be, it's all about winning. But how was it for you?
I think when I was a very little kid, I was dealing with the pressure very well. As I said, the hardest it was when I was 14, 15, but it only took me a few competitions when I gained a little more confidence. Like, I knew what it was going to be about every competition, and then I kind of went on with the flow.
Could you give advice to, say, a 14-year-old right now as to how can you go about competitions? There seems to be more pressure on the younger athletes these days as to how to approach competitions in a healthy way.
I think really when I was 15, when I was like, even on the training, try to like visualize that this is the real competition. Because when you just train and climb and you feel like, no pressure, and then all of a sudden you are in the middle of the competition, it feels unnerving. But if you climb those last sessions before competitions as if it was already a competition, you try to like really pressurize yourself, you pick a certain route, and like, this is the moment when I really have to perform, otherwise I will be disappointed or what. This always helped me a lot to kind of, arrive to the competition and feel like, I've already experienced this so many times and I know I can climb well.
Do you kind of feel like sorry, Nat, did you kind of feel like you wish you could go back to that mindset? When you said you just turned up and when you were a kid and you just didn't feel any pressure, do you try and re-access that?
It would be amazing to be 16 again and arrive on my very first World Cup and just give it a try, but it's not the option anymore. Like, I can't even visualize myself like trying to pretend that I'm in that situation. Like, my approach nowadays just has to be completely different. It has to come more from like having the confidence, from training well, feeling fit, and knowing that I'm capable of doing well. Yet at the same time, like, knowing that you are fit can like make you more confident, but can actually make you feel more nervous. You just have to take the positive side of it.
You said that you felt a lot less pressure when you made the big step up to senior level, but Do you think that was because the seniors were more scared of you than you were scared of them? Do you think that kind of helped a bit? Because they knew you were such a good climber and you were so dominant at junior level.
I don't know. For sure, I was not really thinking on my very first competitions how the result would be. Honestly, I was not thinking that I could win like the overall lead World Cup the very first year. I thought, like, yeah, I'm a good rock climber, but on the lead World Cups, I will be lacking a little bit of fitness, and it will take me a few more years to like really be competitive with the very, very best. But then, you know, you're not climbing against your opponents at the first point. You are climbing against the routes. So I was just climbing up the routes, and I ended up topping most of them, and and that definitely helped. But you know, already the second year the pressure was on. Or the second year I managed to win overall bouldering World Cup, which was again kind of like not so much pressure. Let's see what happens. But the second year of the lead World Cup, it was already quite a lot of pressure because I knew I was defending my overall World Cup title, and I knew I had a good chance to win like World Cup in bouldering and World Cup in lead, and that made the things much more unnerving, but actually at the same time much more interesting. Yeah. And I definitely value the victories later on in my career so much more because, like, for me, it was just so much more difficult.
Well, just sticking with the mental side of things, how do you focus? Do you think much about what other people have done? Do you get involved with the mind games, or how do you stay absolutely where you need to be? How do you keep your focus where you need it to be?
So it's actually easy to get nervous already like days or weeks before a competition. So it's important just to focus on the very next training, on the very next boulder problem, and not really to focus too much about what's going to happen. For sure, I know my training plan. I know that it's organized well in order to like get the best shape possible for that day, for that hour. But it's not like I need to convince myself at the moment, ooh, I don't want to train, but I have to because I want to be fit for that. I'm so lucky that I enjoy climbing and training so much that I don't need this motivation from the goal, but I am motivated enough just for the process of the training and hard training, maybe sometimes playful training, enough. Just very occasionally, all I need is just to think about the goal, but it doesn't come very often. So you basically don't really think about too much until the competition is really on, like only 10 minutes before I actually start climbing.
So when the competition is on, it's happening, you've got a flash routes basically, and you're on site in quite hard lines. When just the other night, actually, I watched Real Rock 13 somehow for the first time, and there's a huge section in there about visualization, and the visualization that you do with Klaus as well about the silence route. Incredible scenes, actually, like pretty mind-blowing watching that for the first time. Do you take those tactics into the competitions as well when you come out for a semi-final or a final line? Like, how much visualization can you do in that period when you're in the isolation zone behind the wall?
So on the observation, I do memorize all of the handholds, most of the footholds, and most of the clips. So I do visualize quite a lot in the isolation, but I would say I just go through the route maybe 4 times in order to like really know, okay, handholds are here, footholds are here. Not really like visualizing myself the body positions. And then I climb like 2 or 3 times with very detailed like imagination of how my body is going to be in each movement, but not more.
Is that
because
different?
Even the visualization can actually make you tired. Because even during the visualization, some of the muscles that you are needing are actually contracted. So let's say the last 10 minutes before I climb, I don't even visualize it. The last 10 minutes before I climb, like let's say in the lead finals, is like almost always the most stressful time. And there is like no way to avoid it. You just have to deal with it. You will always be nervous. The trick that I do, for example, that I visualize myself not climbing that route that I'm going to attempt, but I'm visualizing myself a moment, last training session or like recent training sessions, when I felt I was climbing great. And you know, I was like in the flow and everything felt easy and I felt strong, and I'm like, yeah. Considering that I was feeling so fit 3 days ago, why should it be any worse right now? I'm only just more rested and everything is even more perfect. So I'll climb exactly like this with these feelings. And when you have these feelings of this flow, then you'll just end up climbing well.
When you go out for observation, I know you speak about 6 languages. Do you ever use your languages to speak with other climbers and try and get a deeper insight into beta and the moves, or is it just the international route reading dance that you do?
Yeah, for sure. The language we usually use is English. Only last year was amazing that I was with my teammate Martin Straning in 2 World Cup finals in Chamonix and Cragne, which felt amazing. But for me, I prefer to use like the 6 minutes of the observation. At least 3 or 4 minutes, I just go through the route just by myself, and just in order to like memorize it as much as possible. And only the last 3 or 2 remaining, I go through the route with somebody else.
So you've been
because
coached.
Then you have all the time in the world in the isolation, just together.
Yeah.
As long as you remember it.
So you've been
But
coached
definitely
by...
it is very, very important to discuss the betas with most of the other people. If you only preview it yourself, you have a big disadvantage. It will be very, very likely that you will miss something. Because in the end, we all kind of know all the ideas, and it's up to us which option we will choose. But it is very important to be conscious that there is this option. Because maybe from a different perspective, when you're up there on the route, it will be just obvious that this is the option. But if you are not conscious about the option, you will just end up climbing the wrong way.
Is this something that your coach, Pachi Usubiaga, taught you? Your legendary competition climber, former world champion. What was it like being coached by him and switching roles as well, because you've competed against each other, you've had some quite close fought battles. What was it like being coached by him?
I think precise opinion is more like something that I gained over the years. But having coached in 2014, Pachi was amazing because he was someone that I could trust, because he's got so much experience, and with that experience, so many times he was able to beat me as well. So he was the person that I could trust, because he had to go over all of these things so many times, over the hard training, into tuning the shape, and facing the pressure of the competition itself, and like basing the confidence on the hard training you have done before. And that helped me a lot, because I think two brains just know better than one. And like it's just so much more likely that you will end up doing good periodization of the training, and on the day of the competition you will just end up feeling great. And right now we've been training together already 6 years, so we have both so much experience that for sure we are just figuring out the new things, and it's very important, especially with the new Olympic format. But we've got the experience that no matter how much we, let's say, make some new things, we just keep part of the old stuff as well, in order to like be safe that I arrive to the competition and I feel good.
I want to just go change gears a little bit and just think about the Olympics. Initially, you said you were trying to think hard about trying for the Olympics, and what was going through your head is, you weren't sure initially, and there was a lot of, the internet was exploding with discussion about the Olympics and is Adam Ondra going to be there? What was the big thing that really changed your mind, do you think?
Already when I was like 8 years old, there were rumors that climbing would be at the Olympics, or I had the feeling that let's wait 10 years and it's going to be there. So it took 20 years for the climbing to finally make it to the Olympics. So for sure, the format was very disappointing, and it kind of made me doubt whether I would like go for it or not. But then, of course, Olympics, it's the Olympics, and I was aware that I would miss a big chance.
When the format was announced, what? I think we all know what you didn't like about the format. How has it been, speed climbing, and how has the format differed from how you expected it? Have you enjoyed speed and combined more than you expected?
So I didn't like personally combined because of speed, but like from the broader perspective, combined is not bad because of speed. Combined from the broader perspective, from the audience perspective, is bad because I think it's just too complicated and too long to watch, especially for a non-climber. From my perspective as a climber, I didn't want to do speed because I thought I would hate it like so much. At least I'm trying to pretend that I don't hate it, and I'm trying to pretend that I like it. So honestly, it's been much more fun than I expected. For sure, like nowhere close to being as fun as sport climbing or bouldering, but there are certain factors that I like. It's so like working on a route for many, many times and like sussing it out into very tiny details.
You think after
lots of things to learn on the way.
Do you think you might every now and then just have a quick run on the speed wall when the Olympics is gone? Just every
no way. It would also be frustrating, if you don't speed climb for, let's say, 2 years, for sure you will be nowhere close from your personal best.
I was watching some of your Road to Tokyo series, and you said at the start of this year you'd put a lot of effort into speed, quite dedicated. I think, was it a month of speed training? But now the Olympics has been delayed. How does that play out for you for speed training in the future? Not to give all your secrets away, obviously, but just to give us an idea of what you might do now.
Let's say from that perspective, I'm quite happy. I have more time to prepare myself for speed. It might be quite tough mentally to like do something that I don't enjoy that much for one more year, but I'm quite positive that I could take advantage of it and make some gains in speed climbing. And at least so far I've been dealing with let's say the mental side of the speed quite well.
We've seen you train with Rishat, Khaibullin and Libor Rosa. When you train with these guys, is the main benefit a physical one, or is it refining your beta on the route, the specific sequence for the speed route? What's the kind of main benefit that you get out of it?
So from Libor, let's say he's my coach, so it's both. For Rishat, obviously he's just so much faster than me, so it's kind of difficult to learn anything from him because we are like on completely different level. That's like if a 7A climber should learn something from a 9B climber. For sure there's stuff, but it's quite difficult. Most importantly, the fact that I can train on a speed wall with Rishat, it's like you're not there alone.
Yeah.
Because like speed climbing is in the end, you get into the gym, you make a warm up, and then if you give it 10 tries, you end up climbing 70, 80 seconds. And between your burns, you need to rest like at least 8 minutes. So there's lots of time to kill. And if you are not there alone, it helps a lot.
Okay.
So basically what you're saying is Rishat's just someone to talk to. I mean, that's...
Yeah, and he's really nice to talk to.
Just quickly, obviously we'll talk about you, but Rishat was a big surprise in Hachioji. Can you no one knows much about him. What's he like? What's his bouldering and his lead like? I mean, what can you tell us about him?
So the funny thing is that he does not consider himself as a speed specialist.
Yeah, I know. He said it was boring. It was like
exactly. So he comes from Kazakhstan. So like the former Soviet Union part, where like speed climbing is the thing, or like if you want to climb, at least part of your climbing has to be speed climbing. So that's what he did when he was a kid, and like miraculously he was incredibly talented. So until he got to Czech Republic when he was 19 for studying, he was doing a little bit of everything. But when he moved to Czech, he was mostly just lead climbing and bouldering. Like he used to live in Prague, so there was no speed wall, and so he was only lead climbing and bouldering, and then for Hachioji he started training speed once a week, and all of a sudden he just got so good that he was running at 585 in Hachioji.
No problem to have, hey?
Amazingly, by doing the speed climbing once a week.
Are you just hoping that rubs off on you a bit? You just get a bit.
I think in order to like get even like 0.7 seconds slower than him, I need to do so much more work than him.
Speaking about Hachioji, when you look back at that now, how do you feel about it?
In the end, I do remember the good things, which was taking the Lead World Championships title, which felt amazing. For combined, I see it also as a positive experience. You know, at that moment it hurt a lot, but in the end, I just take it as I see the positive side that I did take a chance to make another combined event competition. And let's say it was like a huge mental obstacle that I had to overcome. And the pressure that I was facing in Toulouse was immense. And I don't think the pressure will be any higher than Toulouse in Tokyo.
A lot of that
in the end, I think it's a great experience to have.
So much of that pressure in Toulouse was because of the incident in the combined with standing on the bolt in the finals. Part of my other life is organising events, route setting, and thinking about all these details that the athletes have to put themselves through. Do you have any ideas to the solution of the standing of the bolts, and do you think it could be an issue in the Olympics?
I think at least on the events like the Olympics or World Championships, it should be solved. And I think it's quite easy to do. You know, we just make a hole in a panel and put a sling inside and make a nut from the other side.
The low-tech solution.
I don't know, from the safety reason. For sure it's safe. I don't know what like the certification would say, but
I'm imagining
if like if the hole was like rounded enough with like the rounded metal or something, for sure I wouldn't have any fear to take a fall into it.
I'm imagining
just do British training.
Sorry, I've got this vision in my head of Adam's training will just be dotted with loads of bolts with slings hanging out of them. I've stood on it again.
Electrifying.
No, honestly, I am climbing in a way that I'm conscious that it could happen. But for me, with my climbing style, there's absolutely no way that I will be thinking all the time whether I'm stepping on a bolt or not.
Yeah, you can't.
No.
If I will start doing it, I will just climb much worse and I will not reach my potential. It is a danger that can happen. And that's the way it is. For sure, the route setters can set it in a way that if potentially they see that it's quite natural to be kind of close to the ball hanger, maybe just set it in a different way. But I know, especially in Hachioji, for setting that route in combined qualification, they were under a lot of time pressure, and hopefully they will have more time to set for the Olympics.
In Hachioji as well, you had John Branch, the news reporter from the New York Times following you. I think he was also in Vail and Toulouse as well. What was that like? And has your profile increased since making the Olympics? Have you had a lot more mainstream media interest?
For sure, there is a little bit more mainstream media interest, but at the same time, there are people working for me that are kind of like picking the media that is interesting, then that we should not say no. So John was definitely one of them. But for me, I don't feel I need to like do more, let's say, interviews in general compared to 5 years ago. The difference is like now I have people who say no to some of them on behalf of me, because I'm not very good in saying no.
Well, thank you for saying yes to this.
Just one more thing about Tokyo. It's really on everybody's mind, but the heat is one thing that a lot of athletes have talked about Tokyo. Have you thought about it? Because for people who don't know, I can't remember the exact date that it's changed to now. It's July, August. We were there for Hachioji last year. It's just unbearably hot for somebody from England anyway. It's unbearably hot. It's probably mild for some other countries. But what's your tactics? Have you thought about that and how you can kind of combat those issues?
So I think no matter where you will go as a preparation in Europe, it will never ever be not even close to how horrible it is in Tokyo in summer. So the way is to go to Tokyo 1 month before the Olympics and just try to get used to the heat, and for sure trying to get used to the heat even like months before. So definitely I will try to heat up my climbing gym at home. I was also thinking about trying to make the air more humid, and I think it's like one detail which in the end is not detail anymore. It's like a really big thing, and for sure you can tell that everybody has the same conditions. I would not really disagree, because obviously like when somebody is like spend the whole of his life climbing in the hot and humid conditions, it's very different compared to when you grow up in Finland.
Adam, I've got to ask you about something. Moving on, changing topic from last year, because we had Jamie Cassidy on last week, and we were talking about Meiringen World Cup. Just we were asking Jamie all about why they set the crack, how they set it. It was supposed to. They originally had it for the women, and then they moved it over. What were your memories of that day? Just because, the chat with Jamie is very fresh in everyone's mind.
Definitely, it was very memorable finals. I was really, really happy that I managed to top all the 3 previous bowl rounds, because I don't think they were very much my style. Especially number 2 was like really much on my limit. And going into the number 4 was like, and knowing that Tomoa didn't top, I just knew that I won. And it was more about like going on the mat underneath the boulder and just already like smiling and knowing like, what will I do? Like, in the end, I was thinking like, I was confident that the hand jam would be so good that I could like wave the crowd or something. Like in my mind, I was thinking even maybe I will just try to campus it and like wave to the crowd at like 1 arm lock off. But in the end, I was like being a little more conservative and just do the ball to the top.
Did you know that the other guys would struggle so much on the hand jams?
Before the finals, I would think that there will be at least somebody who knew how to do the hand jam. But like those guys, they had even no idea like what you should do with your hand. They were thinking like it's more about the fingers and it's not about the thumb. It was like literally they had no idea. I was nice enough that I was like trying to like explain them in the isolation, but yet at the same time, if it was like the easiest hand jam in the world, maybe it would work. But was not the easiest engine. It was good, but it was kind of like getting more narrow inside. So you really had to be like knowing what you should do.
I can't believe you told them how to do it. That's brilliant.
Just done it all upside down like this.
Yeah. It sounds like learning to trad climb in Britain. Yeah, you pull this and it goes like that, and you push it in and then click it. Off you go. Yeah, exactly.
Coming back, whether I think it was fair or not, like at that situation, it was also hard to like be completely happy about the victory, because it felt like, like those guys had zero knowledge about that. It was more like I felt sorry for them. Yet at the same time, it is climbing and it's very basic technique. Yet at the same time, right now, all right, hand gym was tested, but there's just so much more climbing you can still test. But and the hand gym is the easiest. All the other sizes are much more complicated and complex, I would say.
What's quite ironic is, correct me if I'm wrong, but you went to Tokyo before the start of that season last year to train a lot more of the modern style that you see in a lot of the Tokyo gyms. And ironically, you were faced with the opposite when it came to the first World Cup, which was a classic kind of story from the route setters. But the style, the coordination style, the parkour-based style, there's a lot of talk about it in the climbing community for competitions. What's your opinion on it, and is it currently, do you feel, overused?
I think the route setting is going into the good direction, as it really combines not only the parkour style, but some hard moves as well. And at the same time, the parkour moves are getting more and more complex. So what used to be done 5 years ago, triple dynos on like big holds, now you do the same thing, but you do it on the worst holds, which combines both coordination and a lot of power at the same time. You can still argue that it has nothing to do with rock climbing, of course not, but why competition should have something in common with rock climbing? What I would like to see is like the complexity of the movements, which some of the competitions had, some of the competitions didn't have. But I'm really, really happy to see that, unlike 5 years ago, in order to win the finals at the moment, you have to be strong. 5 years ago, you didn't have to be. Like in some of the finals, all you had to be is to be amazing in coordination, and that's it. And I think most of the boulders like got the point right now that, in order to be good in the competitions, you also have to be physically strong. So for example, I think Tomoa got so much more physically stronger in the last 2 years. And some of the style that he was not so good at, he has improved a lot.
He was amazing in Hachioji.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the lead route setting? It seems as though the lead routes have got a lot shorter and more powerful. They're not as endurance based. Is that something that you agree with? Does it suit you? How do you feel about that?
I think there's, let's say, like ideal length of the lead route, which makes it both fair and entertaining to watch. So I don't know, like the wall in Chamonix, I think is perfect. And the route setting in Chamonix is usually also perfect. It's like, it combines both power, like complexity of the route reading, and power endurance. A little bit of like ability to rest somewhere. But for example, like the wall in Hachioji was just way too short. For like having a world championships, it was quite a shame to see such a bad lead wall. And inevitably, the routes were a little bit shorter. And to me, I think to make a good show, it was kind of like people kept falling like too close. If the route is relatively short, usually like first 20 moves could be very intense, but not so many people fall off. And then all of a sudden, people get tired, kind of too much all of a sudden. And then the split of the ranking might not really be ideal.
Yeah, it's not great for separation.
Yeah. So most of the people like were falling off like either at the lip or at the beginning of the upper head wall, and so last year in some of the lead World Cups, I think the setting was really good. It was complex, but in my point of view, it should really not turn into the direction that is more of a bouldering with rope, which also relies on how many big volumes and slopers they are using. Let's say if it's like only big volumes, it just ends up being too insecure and actually slower. Because once you have a big volumes, you just heel hooks everywhere. And if you have a heel hooks, even if you have a bad sloper, inevitably you will just stop and hesitate and maybe choke up. It's not gonna be a rest. I think it's really important to combine wisely slopers and crimpers, also to make a good show in order to like force the climbers to climb in a nice rhythm and flow.
You mentioned that the wall in Hachioji was too short. I think that was around 12 meters roughly in height. The Olympic wall has been built. You've probably seen it, I imagine. Any initial thoughts on the facilities, how they look?
I think the lead wall looks amazing. If my information is right, it's 50 meters or maybe a little more. So. I think it's the perfect height, and it will give a lot of freedom for the route setters to express themselves and set something nice.
Let's hope so.
Have you been to the venue?
I was at the venue last year in summer when it was a still empty parking lot.
I suspect it still is, to be honest.
No, the panels are there.
Are they?
Yeah, the wall's up. Very up and empty.
What are they going to do with it for the next year?
So the construction should stay and the panels should be taken down before the rainy season starts.
Right.
In order to like make it as nice as shiny.
There's this epic video, I'm not sure if you've seen it, of one of the route setters doing some testing for the test event that they put on a few weeks ago. And we're talking about running jumps. The first move is a running jump on the start of the lead wall, and he completely fluffs it. And he just really just runs and just splats straight into the wall. And it was like the perfect example of, if that was the Olympics, it would have been horrendous.
It's really funny, actually.
It's on Percy Bishton's Instagram if anybody wants to check it out. It's really funny.
Speaking about, we've been talking about the setting for a while, but how would you like to see setting evolve in the future?
Bouldering, lead.
Both.
For sure, route setting should be entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, the decision what is entertaining is not so easy to answer. Like, parkour doesn't mean you will have an exciting show. Like if it's a parkour move where 5 guys arrive and give it 20 tries and they don't even come close to sticking the move, is really boring. So in my point of view, it should just remain complex. And it should have at least some connection with the origins of climbing, which is in rock climbing. And I think lead inevitably will always look like lead. Bouldering, it's really hard to tell. I think it's at the moment it's hard to like invent like a new moves. So even in bouldering, I think it will remain complex. For sure, there will be always some jumps, some coordination moves which we can't even dream about nowadays. Because now there is a whole new generation growing up in the modern gyms, practicing dynos since they were 6 years old. So when they will be 20, they'll be doing dynos that are a million miles away from what we are doing right now.
Adam, the IFSC is in charge of competitions at the moment on the international circuit. If you could sit them all down and ask them one thing tomorrow to change for the better for the future of the sport, what would you ask them?
In general, I think IFSC should not change our sport too much in order to like change the spirit of climbing and and its origins. Like, let's say if somebody will think that it's much more fun to climb the trees, we should not start climbing on the trees, because it has nothing to do with our history as a sport.
Yeah, I think it's a solid answer. I think it's keep things roughly as they are and try not to do anything crazy.
For sure, there are some things that can be improved. It's like, for sure, even in terms of rules, even in terms of route setting, anything. But
commentary,
we shouldn't just change it too much, because at the moment, I think, and so many other things, that it's still super entertaining and interesting to watch. And it's not even that complicated. I do believe there are so many other mainstream sports where the rules are so much more complicated to understand.
Talking about interesting to watch, I think everyone would agree, when you're on the wall, you give 110%, you power scream, you're just so exciting to watch. But do you ever just, relax a bit, have a cup of tea, have a bit of cake, take some time off? Or are you always like on 100%? Do you ever relax? Are you like other climbers?
If there are ever like days or moments where I don't climb, or think about climbing at least. Yeah, and I think it's definitely healthy not to think about climbing 24/7.
Have you ever got to the gym and just thought, I just cannot be bothered today, I'm just going to do a couple of 6As in the corner?
Never, unless I feel just way too tired. If I feel like, if I'm after rest day, I always want to climb. That's for sure. But sometimes I can even force myself to take 2 rest days in a row. If I see the benefit, that the next day I will feel even better. Because there's always like, the reason why today is like, I feel like better not to climb, because I have the vision that if I take a rest day, then tomorrow the climbing will feel even better. Because if you have the experience of how it feels to climb this beautiful route with such a flow, when it feels so easy, and then at certain day everything just feels so hard, the climbing is not as much fun.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
But sometimes it's better to be patient, to have more fun later on.
All right, well, speaking, just quickly, I know you've got to go, you've got another interview. Speaking of delayed fun, quick thought on the Olympics, how that changes your mindset, how you felt when you found out, and what your plans are now?
So, if I knew the news like in January, I would be horrored, because it would be like, oh, 1 more year of speed climbing, amazing. But to be honest, the worst was like those 2 or 3 weeks waiting, and that when it was kind of obvious that the Olympics would probably not happen in summer, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. When the news finally happened, all right, it's postponed, I was like, yes, finally I know it, I know what to do, and yeah, let's just go on.
Cool. Well, whenever we see you in the Olympics, we're looking forward to it. And thanks a lot. I know you've been doing an awful lot of interviews recently, so thanks a lot for taking an hour out for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
hopefully see you soon at the competitions.
Yeah. Well, who knows? But who knows? Yeah. Thanks, Adam.
Earliest autumn, no?
Who knows?
IFSC hasn't cancelled the July competitions, but I don't see a chance that it could happen.
It's looking tough. Yeah. I don't know. They said they'll do it 2 months before any comp, right? So we'll know by the start of May. So yeah, it doesn't look very hopeful. But hey, we'll see you sometime soon somewhere.
Sure. All right.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.